Yes, all right. We'll call the meeting to order. Can I get a motion that we adopt, to adopt the agenda for the January 8th, 2019 Committee of the Whole meeting be adopted as presented?
So moved.
Councillor Chenard makes that motion. Can I get all in favor? It's 2019, I'm struggling here. Can I get a motion that the minutes of the December 11th, 2018 Committee of the Whole meeting be adopted as presented? I think Councillor Byer had her hand up first there. Oh.
It's fine.
Okay, that'll be Councillor Wilkinson. Kayla, I just want to make sure you're awake for this meeting with the minutes.
18.
18. All those in favor? Okay, moving on.
She got her name right.
No
Deputy
delegations.
Mayor, so.
Oh, I'm just waiting for Councillor Sorensen here to say something. All right, moving on. We're moving to the Executive Office, Legislative Services. And first up, we have the Communications Audit Results Presentation.
Yeah, Madam Chair, we have Ms. Katie Robertson here from Grapevine Communications. She's going to give us a brief overview of the communications line.
Perfect. Come on up, Katie. And we'll just get you to introduce yourself, and then we'll go around and introduce the councillors for you too.
Okay, fabulous. Do I have to touch anything?
Yes, my iPad, it doesn't work.
Okay.
Now you're good to go.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for inviting me to do this presentation. I'm Katie Robertson. I'm the President and CEO of Grapevine Communications, and I completed the audit for the town of Edson, and this is the overview report, and you've received the full report in your package.
All right, thank you. So we'll just introduce
I'm Crystal Byer.
Troy Sorensen.
Janet Wilkinson.
Jackie Curry.
Gene Schnard.
Mayor Kevin Sahara.
Trevor Bevan.
Go ahead.
Perfect. So, okay, I don't know if I'm doing this. This is very high level overview of what was received in your report, but if you do have sort of any questions that you want to ask, maybe we can ask them at the end of it. We'll just go through it and we can come back if that works for everybody. So just a little bit of background. In November, Grapevine Communications was engaged to perform the communications audit, and the research was conducted between November and December 2018. That research, we'll go into a little bit further with the methodology, but it also included me coming out here and then doing a tour of the town, collecting some of the communication tools that you use for the purposes of communicating with your various audiences. So some of the goals and outcomes that we had identified for this particular project were to assess how effective external communications are in achieving both the current and future communication objectives, determining whether or not the communication needs of staff are being met. I will note that the internal communications were focused on quite a bit less than the external, because that's not necessarily what the main focus of the project was, but it still was a piece. And we more focused on whether or not they have the tools to conduct external communications for the organization. And then recommendations based on research findings and assessments. So those recommendations were in the report, and then we'll just do high level overview of what those are in this presentation. The way that we conducted the research, we did some individual surveys with counselors, senior leaders, and managers of the town of Edson. So thank you for participating in that. We did a detailed review and analysis of several pieces of communication that go out from the town. We conducted telephone interviews with individuals identified by the town. So we had 3 individuals who are quite active in the community, whether they're just active, community people or business leaders. And sorry, I put county to say town. Telephone interviews were conducted with 3 comparable towns in Alberta, including Hinton, Drayton Valley, and Devon. And these were identified with some consultation through the AUMA, as well as just from personal experience working with different towns and counties. Some of the other indicators that I used were similar budgets and similar main industry for how their town works, I guess. And that's overall budget, not communication budget. And then an electronic communication survey was conducted for residents and businesses, and I was personally impressed by the number of response. So I'm not sure if you guys were happy with it, but I've conducted surveys. I've actually worked for Town of Stony Plain and Brazeau County and done surveys there, and we don't usually get that much, at least positive feedback. So it's usually people who are angry. So I was really impressed by that.
Oh, we get that too, trust me.
How many people participated? Is that coming up?
We had 178 or so.
Somewhere in that area.
Yeah, it was 178, I think, just off the top of my head. But the number is
It's in the report.
In the report.
I don't have a full report.
It was emailed out previous to the meeting.
That's one here.
And we only have the partial report. It's,
Partial report, page 42.
yeah.
Yeah. And this one, pick up anything here.
I'm sure. Well, I'll see if you can send it out to you.
It'll be posted online as well.
So just going over some of the key findings. So the function at the town is a single resource, obviously, we know that. And much of the communications efforts of the town are decentralized, depending on the capabilities of each department to administer their own communications. This is quite common with municipalities of your size and similar budget. And secondary, the town maintains a wide range of high-quality communication tools and processes, supporting generally effective communications with town employees and residents despite their limited resources. Again, I wouldn't say that this is as common. The size and how much communications is going out is relatively similar, but the quality of it is not necessarily something that this size and budget that I see as frequently or often. So, and then the breadth and quality of the town's communication efforts are comparable in quantity and quality to the other towns that I spoke with. So the other three. So these are just high-level recommendations. In the report, you'll see quite a bit more detail in terms of sort of what I recommend would help to sort of achieve these if you decide to go forward with the recommendations. So improve corporate communications productivity and overall effectiveness. This is will always be, I think, a recommendation in any communications audit, because it should always be a moving target in terms of there's always room for improvement. Identify strategic opportunities to leverage current and future staff capacities. So that again was outlined in a little bit more detail within, but just looking at some staffing, allocating some dollar resources to being able to bring on even temporary help for bigger projects or one-off projects, looking at, going for outside help, etc. Continue developing and improving citizen engagement. Based on the responses that I got from the telephone interviews, it appears as though the engagement is at a satisfactory level in terms of what I see for best practices. But again, there's always room for improvement, and that should always be a moving target. Identify and coordinate strategic opportunities for council communications. Now, in a larger center, so for instance in the city of Calgary, council each have their own communications person, versus a small town, then that ends up being, something that becomes a little bit more challenging in terms of resources, right? So you have administration providing communication services sometimes for council and mayor, and just looking a little bit at providing tools to you versus doing work for you is something that you'll want to look at moving further down the road. And then joint corporate communications and marketing effective improvement. So just sort of separating what PR is versus marketing, and then also in that looking at sort of the economic development pieces of things. Marketing tends to come a little bit more into play when you're looking at ECDEV versus communicating to your residents, for instance. So then this goes a little bit more into detail, but I won't read each one all the way through because you do have it. But just so improving corporate communication productivity and overall effectiveness, we looked at current and planned external communications should continue. But again, looking at sort of outsourcing some of the staffing pieces until you're able to bring on a more permanent solution. And then town's communications coordinator should be engaged at the onset of all department-specific initiatives. This should be built in, if at all possible. My recommendation is into a policy. It just helps trigger, like when, so for instance, your engagement policy saying like to involve communications right away, it helps to trigger that action, not necessarily for your communications role, but more for like the leadership role or the people that are going to be implementing different projects. And they say, oh, I have to call communications. It just sort of helps create that trigger. And then the communications coordinator must work with the CAO and leadership to continually prioritize and assess and assign communications at the highest importance. So typically communications do work very closely with mayor and then CAO and SLT or and management. The purpose for that is twofold. One is that communication sometimes can identify if there may be issues that are arising out of a project, because they might have a better sort of touch point with what's happening in the community or culturally in the community, and then also to start that planning process, because they can sometimes see what the needs are going to be and then say, okay, I know this project is going to be, say, 3 years out, and then they can start budgeting for it on their side of things versus the other way around where we have to find dollars to be able to do communications. Improving corporate communications productivity. So one, consider the option to apply additional resources to communications. We talked about that. The communication coordinator continues to require direct access to leadership. So we've talked a little bit about that. My recommendation is that communications participates in leadership meetings versus the information being funneled afterwards, again, for the reasons that I had mentioned before. And then a thorough policy review and audit. So review of what policies are in place now, and then auditing those, and then also deciding which ones need to be brought up. Written, sorry. And then especially in the area of emergency and crisis communications. So that would be my number one recommendation. That's the first policy that gets written and put into place. Identifying strategic opportunities to leverage current and future staff. So address the staffing resources to reduce bottlenecks. When you're coming into the spring season, for instance, now you've got 3 or 4 different construction projects happening, but then there's also the ongoing communications that are happening, garbage changes, all these things. Then it's really important that you look at what the resource and the capacity is that's available there. Further develop and document formal communication policy guidelines. So this is really sort of to guide the pieces that are decentralized and the people that are working on the decentralized communication, so that they feel empowered to be able to do that work effectively and also efficiently. And so part of that is developing training for managers and supervisors to support the rollout of the policy and guidelines. So it's like, okay, we have, for instance, you already have your brand identity, but this is how it needs to be implemented. And say you're making a template of a brochure and that needs to be used across the board, well, then we're going to provide some training in terms of this is what we need to communicate to the staff of how it can be used and the different uses of said whatever it may be. It could be a template. Decentralized communications with a centralized approval process. So wherever it's possible, I do recommend that it's decentralized. Again, in a larger center or more urban center, then each department would have its own communications person, and then they would report to like the main communications branch. But in this instance, like the resources will just have to say, okay, so we've used this template. Communications, are you okay with it? Yes. Bye. And it's just for that one last glance to make sure that communications that are going out align with your strategic priorities and your overall sort of key messages and themes of the organization. So continue developing and improving citizen engagement, continue to use and promote social media channels. The feedback that I received, especially during the telephone interviews, is that Facebook seems to be the most popular sort of way to source information. Continue to use and promote the app. That wasn't necessarily the biggest trigger for, this is just for the telephone interviews, but I would say that moving forward, there is a younger population that are coming up, and that's what they're more used to than Facebook. So you're really just creating a bridge so that you don't end up with a gap later on. Continue to develop enhanced public participation. So some of the feedback that I got was, yes, open houses are attended, that they're useful, and that's just one example of using your public participation framework, but reaching out to them and asking for feedback is an important tool in terms to make decisions on behalf of who your audience is. I'm just gonna take some water. So continue developing and improving citizen engagement. You guys have a new website, and in comparison, it's quite a bit newer than the other municipalities that we compared it to. Recommendation, best practice is every 5 years is a complete revamp, because by then most of the technology is out of date, and then most of the information, it just gets way too messy, because we tend to, communicators and municipalities, just dump things on a website, especially just because we're looking at that transparency piece, and we want to make sure that everybody has access to documents, but that's not necessarily the best use of a site, because then it gets bogged down and people have a hard time finding actual information that they're looking for. And then further develop and improve LinkedIn presence. So I would use this as a business and economic development tool as well as an HR tool, and that's something it's the best place to use that tool. Identify and coordinate strategic opportunities for council communications. So develop a formal government relations advocacy plan. This is more of a triggering document. So it's like in this situation, we're going to call this consultant, or we're going to take these steps to, work with, if you want to do some advocacy or lobbying with provincial or federal governments, or even surrounding municipalities. Conduct advocacy government relations training workshop for town council members and senior town administrative leaders. This is recommended, it doesn't need to be super long or in depth or 4 days kind of thing. It's maybe an afternoon or whatever, just to sort of talk about what some of the approaches might be, the strategic approaches might be, if you are dealing, and it could be as simple as you're asking the province to, upgrade the road going through the town or whatever, and it's becoming, so what's our steps and like what's the best approach for that? Is it all of council? Is it just the mayor? Is it just administration? Just being able to talk about that. Develop a communications plan and key messages to position the value of services with residents. This is just based out of what's come out of, especially with the taxes and also the garbage change. And there was one other big thing that was mentioned. And then the cannabis too. So that wasn't necessarily, your decision, but the value of services in terms of, like why do we spend this money here, versus like, well, we're looking at buying 400 pencils or whatever. It's more having more collaborative approach with the. Continue working with council to support and develop social media presence. So this is, helping council be present on social media, because most of the time, especially if somebody has an issue, they're going to come to a counselor versus come to the town. So just making sure that bridges gap, or that gap is bridged. Joint corporate communications and marketing effectiveness improvements. So shift from output to outcome mentality. Like, just because you have this new thing or you're doing something else or you're changing something, it doesn't mean that you have to just like start blasting things out in every form possible. It's really about taking more of a strategic approach. Like, what is it that we're really looking for? It might just mean, I'm going to call up the 3 people that this is actually affecting, versus we need to write a newsletter and put an ad in the paper and tell everybody about it. It's okay to really sort of hone in on who that actual audience is and then deal with that like in that manner. Consider developing departmental communications capacity. Again, that was sort of mentioned. If, for instance, planning and development, they grow exponentially and their communications is basically like the full-time role, then start sort of looking at building in that capacity within the department. Develop a common strategic planning template and use similar measurement concepts to track project process. So this would just be, Steve already has something like this where they like fill out a form and it says we're doing this project, but just sort of empowering them a little bit more to think about why they're doing the communications, and then that will help sort of trigger like where should we do it, how often, how much, and what's that measurement. And that's it.
Right.
Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you. Questions? Somebody has any? Councillor Chenard.
Thank you for your presentation. Just one, well, I have a whole bunch of questions, but just one quick one. When you went onto our website and you noticed it's different, how easy did you find our website to use compared to other towns?
Mm-hmm. I found it's really easy. Yeah. One of the biggest things that I noticed about your website is that it's easy to read. So it's quite clean in my opinion, and the font's a little bit bigger. I don't need glasses yet, but there's some sites and you have to.
Right.
I need what are they called? Binoculars or whatever, magnifying glass to be able to read it.
Yeah, I was just curious because that's a lot of times common complaint. You will tell someone they want to know something and you would refer them to the town website. Mm-hmm. Some people said, oh my God, it's too confusing, mm-hmm. and yet other people can find it. Mm-hmm. So I was just curious your opinion.
Yeah, and I took a look too at your site map, and I would say that, it's in line with other municipalities. One of the things that I would recommend next time you do a whole revamp or just moving forward, if you're ever making changes to the site, to think about how a resident is going to look for something. So we tend to build our websites from looking at it internally. It's like, oh, okay, so this is a planning document. It has to go under planning and infrastructure, but that doesn't necessarily make sense to somebody who's outside, right? They're like, I just want to know about weeds or whatever it is. Those are not in the same department, but
weeds or weed?
Maybe
that's
both.
That's a legitimate inquiry these
Getting
days.
rid of the weeds from my weeds. So Yeah, so just sort of, that would be the one suggestion that I would make, and that's for most municipalities.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor
Through
Wilkinson?
the chair, most of this you did on social media. I just wondered, did you do any research into the radio ads we have with our mayor and our
I-
CAO?
Not with the radio ads, no.
And that's not part of communication?
Yeah, it is, it is.
Okay.
That just wasn't identified as something that we were gonna audit.
Okay, because
Yeah.
even with all of this, like, it is important, but again, as I keep stressing, not everyone even has a smartphone.
Mhm.
And this is what we're addressing here.
Yeah, I'm not recommending that you stop using the radio. Like, you should continue using it. Mhm.
And I think even communication in here, again, we had people complain they couldn't hear here, possibly we could get a microphone or something in there. Like, I think all the communication parts are important, yes.
For sure.
The social media is, but so are other parts yet for our citizens.
Councillor Sorensen?
Great presentation. One of the things I've advocated for in previous meetings was, because we are having tough times sometimes getting people to come out to public forums or open hearings. So one thing I advocated for was having an active email list that we can send surveys to of volunteers within the community that are willing to provide feedback. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, how useful that would be, rather than asking people to come to us with comment, actually going out. Maybe if they don't have email or smartphones, we could do a phone survey with them, but having an active list of community members that we can ask information from.
I would recommend against. Okay, so you already have a newsletter, right, that people subscribe to?
We did, but we've canceled that. We're going mostly with the app.
Okay, so what I would do is use push notifications on the app and possibly the website. The only reason that I say not to go with that approach is that you'll get only a handful of people. So say you have your 10 people who always do their surveys a day sign up for it, but then now you're limiting asking just those people, right? Versus depending on what the issue is, you're gonna still want to ask everybody to attend. So it's just, you don't want to leave people out.
Anyone else? I have a couple questions. One was when you were talking about the advocacy plan, and sorry, I didn't get the appendix either, and I can look at that after,
No.
but did you have some examples of advocacy plans that we could see?
I could send a couple, but no, it wasn't included in
Okay,
the report.
yeah,
But I'm
it-
happy, I can send Steve a couple of examples.
Perfect, thanks, that would be fantastic. And then also with, I know you did one training with us, but then training that's available, is there specific training that is available for? And I was thinking more in the lines of that with the council communication and such, when you're talking about advocacy and us coming up with a plan and that, like, is there a very specific training available, or is that something that would be through Steve?
Both. I can't speak to the capacity in-house, but yes, for sure there is resources available outside of like on a consulting basis to do training.
Perfect, thank you. And then one last one, and this might be, it might be you. How detailed is our communications policy? Like, is it as detailed, like, I work for Alberta Health Services, so like, is it as detailed as like font, visual, knowing that our separate departments do their own advertising? Is it that detailed or no?
We do have in our branding guidelines, we do have details on fonts and sort of the visual side of things, but we don't go as much into the actual communication side.
Okay.
If I may add to that, yeah, I certainly think the consolidated branding has helped with that, but I do think that we have an opportunity to go even further to create that kind of cohesive look. So if something comes out from the town, people can immediately recognize that's a town-related advertisement or document by font or color or style. And so I think we've got the foundation for that in the branding guide, and can go to the next level of ensuring, as we say, hey, we want to diffuse the communication out to the departments, and we want to make sure that we're not diffusing the brand or message, and so, but I do think that's something that is on our radar for sure.
Perfect, okay, thank you. Councillor Schnurr?
You may have already asked the question, but I'll ask the question. So we've had a communication officer for some time, and you're looking at it. How well do you think Edson is doing compared to other towns? Or is that a fair question to ask you? Like, I mean, there's always room for improvement, but I believe we're doing a pretty good job. But what would be your-
Comparatively speaking, with the 3 municipalities
Yes.
that I did the analysis on, I would say that you're doing very well.
Perfect. So we got not a lot of room for improvement, so we're up on the
Moving target.
I was just curious, you know, because now that, you know, with your opinion, and we've had, so if we're doing a good job, so keep up the good work. We got a little room, so it's not gonna cost a lot more money then.
Mayor Sahara?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. I've been fortunate enough to be in communications for over 14 years, and a lot of the recommendations I see here are pretty standard for a lot of organizations. I think that we don't have the financial capacity to add staff, but I think there's certainly opportunity to outsource some stuff in terms of graphic design. I know how time consuming that can be, and I really like some of these recommendations here moving forward. Citizens engagement, I think we've done a lot of work on that over the last year, and I think this council and staff should be very proud of that. But as you mentioned, always room for improvement. And I think with the app, it's still a fairly new thing in our communities, so we got to continue to build on that. But I really think that's the golden ticket to really help communicate with people, and then connecting with some of those areas where people that don't have smartphones, like Pioneer Cabin, some of our more senior members of the community who might not be connected that way, seeing if there's ways to strengthen that communications link to provide that. And Councillor Wilkinson mentioned the radio. I think that's just one of the tools in the toolbox. I haven't received a lot of feedback on that, so I think that's something we're going to have to review, but I know the newspaper is another good way of communicating, so thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Wilkinson?
Through the chair, if we do need training on how to be advocates with the government and everything, I think we really should hire our mayor, because I did compliment him earlier with the work you've done with CN. Went to go snowshoeing and thought maybe I'll just go for coffee because the train will hold it up. It didn't. No, you've done a good job on that. I think they aren't keeping the crossing, and you do know how to do it. Like in your former work, you saw many people who are advocates for something, so I'm sure you've got some little clues as to make it successful.
Things to do and certainly
Yeah, and not to do.
Yeah.
Very important. I think it'd be interesting, very interesting.
Councillor Beyer?
Through the chair, I think this question is to administration. So our communication coordinator, Steve, if he is not here, do we have other staff members cross-trained to assist him, whether he's out of the office that day, or just if there's extra workload, during a special time?
Sure. Perhaps I'll answer that, and then Steve can tell you his sad story after. I would say yes and no. In a very, very basic level of communication, can we do a Facebook post, and can we get the ads into the newspaper? And yes, and there's a few people that kind of fill those spaces, but we certainly don't have a lot of resiliency in our communication department of one. And so part of that we're hoping to address as part of the recommendations you heard is to try and make sure the departments are as capable as possible of doing the appropriate pieces of communication that belong at those levels, which simultaneously frees up Steve to do other things, but also Steve can maybe go on vacation every once in a while, and it's not such a terrible thing for the rest of the organization. But it is certainly something we struggle with, and unfortunately we're also just that kind of size of an organization where I don't think we could justify at this stage an additional full-time position, but Steve's capacity is pretty close to maxed out, and so we're kind of in an awkward position there. And I think in the short term, the next several years or 5 years or however long, things change quite quickly, obviously, especially in communications. But I think we can do a better job of outsourcing some of those pieces that can relieve some of that. But so anyway, the short answer to that short piece of that long answer is we can function at a basic level, but it is certainly a challenge. Steve, anything to add to that?
No, I think you covered it pretty well.
Councillor Schnurr?
Since we're bringing up our communication guy, now would the communication be directed, because I was Rune, the CEO, or should it be the town manager or the mayor? Because like where you had said, some big cities, of course, have their own communication guy. So should our communication guy, when we're trying to get messages out, should be directed through council or administration? Like what we're trying to put out, the information.
So if council wants to put out a message, should
Right.
they be going straight to?
Correct.
I
Or should it be, you know, I'm just trying to figure out the correct order. Of course, not every councillor, but I mean saying town manager and mayor.
So typically, that's like the way that it works is council can't ask, you know, staff administration to do things unless it's going
Correct.
through the CAO. I have seen in smaller municipalities where, you know, the mayor has a little bit more access to
Correct.
the communications person, and truthfully, counselors as well. But it's not necessarily, you know, Councillor Curry can come, or sorry, your deputy mayor right now. Deputy Mayor Curry can come and say, hey Steve, I wanna do this campaign, like put this together for me, right? It would be more of, you know, maybe asking.
Dang it, we were gonna use you,
Hey
Steve.
Curry, or, but that really just depends on the way that your organization functions.
I think if I may add to that as well, I do think Steve actually works quite regularly with the mayor in terms of communication, as the mayor is often, you know, speaking or on the radio or those types of things, and so I think we've developed that, generally speaking. And I think we're also talking about, we have not, I think, got to the stage of a organization where, you know, you say, well, City of Calgary, each councillor has their own kind of communication person that actually guides them through their personal kind of communications as a councillor. Right now, we're at a policy base where, hey, we give you these guidelines or recommendations as a councillor, but you're kind of responsible for that on your own. And Steve's really main role is, what is the organizational message, and making sure that if council has a message, absolutely that's Steve, but if Councillor Chouinard has a message, then that's really, as long as you follow the policy and guidelines, it's kind of your responsibility to communicate that, whether it's through your own social media outlets or other ways.
Yeah, because the reason I bring it up, because like I think on our policies, like our spokesman on our Facebook page would be the mayor or else Steve. So answering kind of the question in Steve's absence, then we can call, because he's an expert at this communication, so we're blessed that way. But I mean, then we have a backup person, because like on our-
Martina was on the other day on Facebook.
Right, but that's what I'm just saying.
No,
So,
if I may add to that, the mayor will not be the backup communication person for
No.
Steve, certainly
no,
not.
You gotta enjoy your new job, your other
Yeah.
one's gone.
Mhm.
If I may.
Yep, Mayor
I
Sarah.
think there's a unique difference. There's the operational
Mhm.
components of the town, which is Steve's. Usually, if I'm posting something, it has probably going to have a political impact. So, you know, I post snow removal. Yes, there's the operational side, but I know that I'm going to be getting a lot of complaints. So,
Yes.
you know, I post my own information that is based on what the administration is sending me. So, and that's, you know, I think there's some distinct differences there. There's the political side, which is what we're responsible for, and we're all responsible for communicating to our public. And then there's the operational side, which administration is responsible for. Obviously, if there's a crisis or an emergency and Steve's away, I'm sure the CAO will be calling me and saying, can you get something out until we can,
Correct, yeah.
you know, so there's always that.
We
kind of-
appreciate the share button in yours.
Yeah.
Great job.
So it really is working together and trying to get that message out.
Perfect. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you. You were welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but you're
Thank
also
you.
welcome Yeah.
I do quite miss council meetings, but I think I'll hit the road.
Drive safe. All right, moving on to council attendance at municipal law seminar. I believe this is Mr. Derricott.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have much to add other than what's there. There was just a suggestion made that there's an opportunity to perhaps gather additional information by perhaps having a contingent of council attend the Reynolds Mirth seminar. It's really basically the exact same principle as council's experienced at Brownlee. And so it's now just at council's discretion to discuss how council may want to navigate that opportunity.
Where's Sarah?
Yeah, I think that counselors should be able to attend both seminars if they wish. It's not a lot of cost, and I know that we probably not going to have some people going to FCM this year, so we'll have some room in our budget. I don't think we need to send counselors to both, all of council to both, but if there's some counselors that would like to attend both, I'm certainly not opposed to that. There's value in these seminars, and looking at the agendas, I think that there's some benefit there. So.
Did you have yours up? No, okay, sorry. Councillor Schneider?
Yeah, I would agree. If council wants to attend both, myself personally, I like the Brown Lee one. There's a lawyer, but I'm not against because I also looked at it. There is valuable information on both, and it's for us because we set policy and stuff. It's just more information for us. So I'm not against sending everyone to all of them, but personally, I would just attend the Brown Lee one.
Councillor Swartzen?
I agree. I firmly believe that knowledge and information is our greatest asset. So if a counselor is willing to attend both, it's more information for us. And I don't think anyone in the public would believe that an all-day seminar at a lawyer or municipal law seminar is
it's a real perk of the job.
So I would encourage. Hopefully we get attendance at both, and if someone wants to go to both, I fully support that.
Councillor Bevin?
I'm the same way in that I'll attend one of them. I won't attend both of them because I can't. So I will pick the one that I'm going to attend to, and I think they're both good in that too. So I won't be attending FCM this year and that. So I think that FCM costs us too much money to go when we go to AMA. And we spend $20,000-$30,000 goes to FCM, and it impacts our budget even though it's in there. I think we attend only one of those two, and that for seems that times are hard right now for everybody, and people are losing their jobs and stuff like that. So I will pick one and go here. So, but if council wants to attend both, that's also fine with me too.
Councillor Breyer?
Through the chair, my opinion is I think that if people want to attend one or two, that's okay. I don't know if it's necessary for all of us to attend both, but it looks like just the way schedules work out that won't be the case. Through administration, just looking at some of the topics, are they all geared for councillors, or is it the council and administration mixture?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, we certainly, I typically attend this session or at least one of those sessions, and there's also other legal seminars that we attend throughout the year. But there's just as much value, I think, for administration in particular. Generally speaking, human resource related issues are certainly a focus there, but there can be planning and development and other items, and so we would just typically look at the slate of, and if there's something of particular relevance to a department, we would certainly consider sending the senior manager responsible for that.
Thanks. Sorry,
Just
Councillor Breyer,
have
go
one more
ahead.
question. Through the chair to administration, following this seminar, will we have an opportunity at our committee meeting to deliberate or discuss our learnings or findings?
I think you certainly we can make that available, similar to how we create a space for, say AUMA or FCM or something like that. I don't have any issue with that. That would be up to council. But.
Okay, Councillor
To the
Wilkinson?
chair, I'd really like to see that happen. I think if we're being paid to go, then I think it's our obligation to bring something back to the table.
Anyone else? I'm the same. I feel if people, I don't think there's very many of us that can make both of them. And I think from the sounds of it, we're doing a pretty good job of distributing between the two. And I agree with Councillor Sorensen. I don't think most of us are, can't wait to spend our day listening to lawyers for 2 full days, but I think it's really, really beneficial. And having gone last year, I thought it really helped us to write, especially I know last year cannabis was a huge topic, and I know it had a huge impact on helping me with making decisions around the bylaws. So,
Cheapest legal advice we're ever gonna get.
Right? Our financials show that it is the cheapest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
All right. If that's it, do you need anything else
I
from
think
us?
we're satisfied with that, Kayla. It's good, thank you.
Perfect. All right. Moving on to FCM Special Advocacy Fund contribution. I believe this is you again, Mr. Haircut.
Yeah, again, thank you. I don't have much to add there. Certainly be happy to answer questions. This, we received recently our invoice for our FCM membership. Included in that was an additional $800 for what they're referring to as a special advocacy fund. This is specifically related to FCM being appropriately engaged through the federal election process and to ensure that municipal concerns are considered as part of that process. This is a voluntary contribution. It is not contingent or doesn't affect our membership or anything like that in the organization, but it would support that effort for FCM to provide advocacy on behalf of the municipal stakeholders in the upcoming federal election.
Councillor Chenard.
Just a question on saying, how much do we pay to them per year now? Like for our membership, I don't see it's on here.
Kayla, do you recall that off the top of your head?
Just roughly, do we know what we pay them now?
Roughly just over $2,000.
Because I guess the reason I'm asking that question, they're asking for an extra 800, and this council has been supporting them all along. We send quite things, so they do make money off us going. So I think we are supporting them. We don't send one or two. So the extra 800 to me, I wouldn't be in favor of because we already support them greatly. So it's just one extra cost that I don't think would be of value to us.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair, I think that we should support this, but I also think that, again, we should have it in writing what we want them to advocate for. Don't let us assume that they're advocating for us as a municipality if they're advocating for dairies in Ontario and a pipeline going the other way. Make sure that we let them know what we want.
Councillor Ryer.
I've got two questions through the chair. To administration, what did we do last year for this? If I recall, it was around $200.
Yeah, thank you. That is a separate initiative under FCM where they have a legal defense fund that they are building so that if they felt there was a legal case going on that had significant ramifications to the municipal industry, that they could consider getting involved in those instances. So a similar kind of concept, but that is a separate fund.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And second question through the chair is similar to Councillor Wilkinson. Do we have anything that we are currently advocating to FCM or our neighboring municipalities that would be a benefit to us that we could offer continued support to them as well?
Pine Beetle.
Yeah, so I would suggest that if council was to support this, they need to consider that this is a very high level, big picture advocacy effort for things like infrastructure, funding, and those types of issues. It is not the type of advocacy you want to think about getting down to local levels, because the Federation of Canadian Municipalities is representing all municipalities across the country, and they can't have 10,000 different advocacy points that are and expect to be effective in their advocacy. I don't disagree that we want to ensure that our interests are met, but I think we have to view this as ensuring that the municipal interest is at the stakeholders table when the federal election is going on, but it won't be for dealing with very specific issues such as pine beetle or other very relevant issues. I'm just not sure that should be how we conceptualize this particular effort.
Councillor Sorensen.
Yeah, I'm going to speak against this fund contribution. FCM's job is to advocate for municipalities every year during the election cycle. They know when the election is. Every 4 years they should be budgeting for a major push right before an election, as well as I think the things that are important to Edson would be washed out by major municipalities as well as washed out by Eastern Canada. So I'm not sure any of this $800 would go to any advocacy that would impact Edson. That's really important to Edson right now.
Councillor Wilkinson?
Through the chair, if indeed you don't think that they would consider some advocacy for the mountain pine beetle, which is really going to affect the whole country. I mean, many of these issues are, and if people put all their things in, then they can do a cumulative report on what they're going to advocate for. But really, when you talk about this, I think it will be Ontario and Quebec that drive this wheel, and it shouldn't be. And it for FCM, it shouldn't be, or else we shouldn't be part of it, if that's what it is. It should be for all of us. And so I would really like to know exactly what they are going to advocate for. That would be number one.
Mayor Sayer?
Yeah, through the chair. I agree. I haven't heard what their plan is for the federal government. I know what the plan is for EUMA when it comes to lobbying the provincial government during the election campaign, but I don't know what that is on a federal scale. And I share the same concern. Is their advocacy going to be about Ontario and Quebec not allowing pipelines through? Because I don't want to be putting money towards that or something that's not conducive to our issues out this way. I think we've got to be careful though. The big thing with the federal government is infrastructure funding. We have a $20 million grant application in, and you know, if there's a change in government, is that funding going to go away? Those pots of money. I think $800 is a small price to pay when you're talking about the funds we receive through the gas tax and other federal initiatives. I think for me at this point, I'm not really in favor of saying yes to this until I have a better idea of what they're going to be advocating for. And you know, one of the main things is I think FCM should be advocating for national programs in the national interest, such as pipelines.
Absolutely.
East and west and north and south. So.
Anyone else? I would echo what has been said around the table. I don't feel there's enough information. I see they're saying just for election, but what does that advocacy relate to with the election? So if they can give a little more detail, I'd be in support, but I need a little more detail.
Yeah, thank you. And so I would certainly suggest that, and Kayla can send out the link to the website, which is all the information we have at this point. I don't think you will find the level of detail that you're hoping to find there, at least on my initial look through it. But also to be very, very clear, administration is absolutely neutral on this. We just are bringing the information forward for council's consideration. And so is this a motion you would like, or not a motion, is this a piece of information you would like us to bring back after you've had some time to review their website? Do you want this to just be done, or I think that's all administration would need at this point.
Councilor Wilkinson?
Through the chair, I'd like you to pursue, just get in touch with them and ask them if they can clarify what the main priority is going to be, and then bring it back to us.
Yeah, that information will be listed on their, there's a piece of their website that describes the program, and I think that's as much information as they'll have for us as now. But
then I guess if they don't have any more, maybe we don't want to support it.
That may be the case.
They have more, I think.
To me, I don't think $800 is going to make or break it. I don't want to waste any more agenda space talking about this, so I say no. This time around.
I say no.
No.
Yep.
I want more information.
No.
all right, so
Yeah.
what I'm taking here is the prevailing feedback from council is that we will not consider this any further at this time. Certainly, there's nothing that says that FCM may not send out more detailed or more additional information at some future date, and if we do feel that there's enough there to warrant council's consideration, we can always bring it back, but we'll leave it for now.
To me, sorry, might be a little bit off point here, but to me, I'd rather spend $800 on some materials promoting Trans Mountain at FCM when we're there, rather than that way we kind of control the message that we're trying to do, and that's our job when we're there, is to advocate, and that includes talking to our colleagues, our councillors in Ontario and Quebec about why these projects are important. Energy East as well.
Sorry, it was just on the news this morning, 278% increase in the amount of fuel oil or oil that is going on the trains now. So when is that accident going to happen?
Yeah.
Like, I think it's really important that we get something done.
All right, anything else on that? You're good? Clear? All right, moving on. We have nothing left on the agenda other than questions from media and public regarding items from the recent committee of the whole meeting.
I'm good.
You good? Nothing from you guys?
Gosh, six.
Scott, nothing? Then can I get a motion for adjournment? Councillor Chenard.
I'll give you the motion for.
All in favor?